So, Z updated the game and added Higuruma. He's an interesting character for sure, but the update in general feels very rushed, which I hate saying because Z has his own life and stuff, but you can sort of tell that this update was on a time crunch. I'll tell you everything that this update does, and basically just go over the entire thing, so that you know more about it. Before we do though, make sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date on any information about JJS. Now, let's get into the video. Higuruma was added to the game. End of Journey, the zombie survival game mode, was added back to Roulette. 2 new game modes, One Beats All, which is where everybody gets one move, with a heavily reduced cooldown and much lower HP, plus Perfection Tag, which is just tag where one person has a 0 cooldown Idle Transfiguration, and everybody can only take 1 hit, was added to the game. 2 new large maps were added to Roulette, that being Shibuya Crossing and Zenin HQ. A new setting that toggles the use of physics-heavy visual effects was added. A code was hidden in the map, let me know if you find it. 1 new emote, Lying Rage, was added. Vessel's faint cooldown on Crushing Blow was removed, but in exchange, it now requires Awakening Meter. Kogai can now do his air combos more consistently if the target was recently launched by an attack. First to 20 was reworked to be more similar to a gun game type game mode. Spike Graph was taken out of the Brain Swap move pool. The duration of Wake Up Stun and Vulnerability was increased. The way that burst is enabled during team fights was changed. You can now freely Ragdoll Escape in Brain Swap. Great Serpent breaking if a player leaves during the attack was fixed. Game Pass icons not being displayed in the shop was fixed. Air combos being affected by Wake Up Stun and Vulnerability was fixed. Game modes appearing twice when voting for game modes in Roulette was fixed. And that's it. Alright, first thing to talk about, it's Higgy. Higuruma is rushed as hell. And also kind of weird, and also just pretty off. I hate saying it because I'm one of the people who voted for Higuruma to get added, and I really like him as a character, but the way he is right now is more odd than anything, which has to do with his M1s being wonky, and his second move being practically a placeholder. Let's start with M1s. Higuruma's M1s are unique in that instead of being a basic string of punches, they do 1 hit, 2 hits, 1 hit, and then the final hit. The animations for it, unlike a basic punch, use a re-extending of the gavel a lot, which makes it very hard to properly read it, both for the person fighting it, and also if you're using it to know which M1 you're on. Also, I think the second hit's double hit extends how long the hitbox lasts, which means that Higuruma's M1s are a lot harder to trade against than other characters. He really just screws up the game's basic combat a lot, and it makes him confusing to fight. Not impossible, but when I was using Higuruma, I found that I tended to not properly M1 trade like I normally do, and kinda just held the M1 button, which worked pretty well. It's strange, maybe there'll be some changes in the next update, but yeah, while the concept is cool, it just doesn't feel right in practice. As for his first move, this thing feels like it was taken straight out of some competitive arcade game. It starts with a series of blockable strikes with the gavel that then finishes in either 2 things, depending on what you do. The first version, which is if you just let the move keep going, is a blockable downward slam that does actually ridiculous damage, like bafflingly high damage numbers. There's a 100% chance that this thing is getting nerfed the moment Higuruma is out of early access, or somewhere when he's in a decent state. It's roughly 40 damage if all of the hits land? Yeah, it's early access syndrome. However, if you press R, you instead do a block breaking sweep that if landed, stuns whoever you hit, giving you a free M1 string. This last hit doesn't hit anyone not blocking though. It does far less damage than the on-block version, but it's a combo starter so that's kind of fair. What this essentially does is let Higuruma play some silly mind games. You can either block and risk getting a combo started on you, or you can unblock, maybe get a chance of getting out of that combo, or risk getting hit by that 30 damage down slam. It's a 50-50 that whatever choice you make gets you out of a bad situation, and a 50-50 that it leads you into a horrible one, which is really interesting design. Both players have to predict how the other will act with this move, and you can mix up your opponent pretty well. As for the second move, this is definitely just a placeholder. It's really just the most lackluster thing ever. 4 punches forward that knock the opponent back for a combo ender. I mean, it can work kind of like Dreams in that it's really hard to hit someone in the middle of it, so if you pop it while someone's about to hit you, you're sort of able to counter hit them. Beyond that though, it's really just weak. Poor damage, boring design, all blockable, it doesn't do anything too big, and it's definitely more of a move rushed out the gate so that Higuruma wasn't just a single move, rather than something that's gonna be here to stay. Generally, Higuruma from my experience is a strange character. He doesn't really feel right. I think there's a lot of interesting ideas with the first move, and his design in the future could be super cool, but as he is right now, he's not finished, and because he's not finished, he feels off. It'll definitely get better with future updates though. As for Roulette's game modes, well, I actually played Roulette for once to test these things out. I'll be brief with my thoughts, but most of the game modes are just okay. End of Journey is terrible. Whoever's designated as it usually just gets swarmed to death and dies. You gotta last more than a minute, which is a huge task with just how many people are after you. It's basically just a curb stomp where one guy gets massacred. One beats all isn't terrible, but it depends on what move gets picked. It can be fun if the move that gets picked as your one move is something where there's actually good counterplay. I mean, I enjoyed the drill splitter one beats all that I fought, but if you get something like Lucky Rushdown, it's just really boring because there's not much counterplay for that move, if the only thing you have is Lucky Rushdown. Finally, Perfection Tag actually does feel pretty fun, but it's super map dependent. Some maps it's very easy to survive with some smart wall jumping, other maps you're kinda screwed since it's way too boxed in, like the construction area. It's sort of enjoyable. If you have skill, you're usually going to be able to survive without too much of a problem on maps that aren't bad. But watching the other people die with me being the last man standing each time made me realize that if you don't know how to use a game's parkour system, it's kinda tough. So, you gotta learn. Yuji's new system for the crushing blow feint is actually a pretty interesting design choice, and I don't disagree with it. Yuji's now get to be a bird again, but less of a bird and more like a commercial airliner. Yeah, you can fly around endlessly, but only as long as you have the fuel to do it. Run out of fuel, and you're back to being on the same level as everyone else, where you have to properly M1 trade. You also can't use it to start a fight, and while you get more freedom, you still have to manage it so as to not drain Awakening too hard. I like the choice overall. Other thing is Kogai getting more consistency. This always needed to happen. The combo had like a 50% chance to drop, which made him feel bad to use because he would just not work properly. It sucked, really. Now that he feels more consistent, he's a better character for sure. As for being able to freely ragdoll escape and brain swap, I get this, but I also don't love it that much. It screws up some combos that you could normally do, which is a point of the update, but it also makes stuff like uppercutting pretty much worthless. Yada yada yada. You know what I mean? I mean, if it solves infinite combos then it's worth it. It's no fun being infinite stunned overall, but it still does kill some combos. Finally, wake up stun and vulnerability. I think this is a decent idea, and it definitely stops one of the biggest problems that Jujutsu Shenanigans had with its basic combat, which was that casual players tended to get infinite comboed by people who just dashed them on wake up or side dash and won them, and it was very hard to stop if they timed it right. And while I never had any problems with it, because again, it's mostly a skill issue to not know how to dash out of the string or block it, increasing the invulnerability period shouldn't cause any huge issues, but it will make things a bit easier, which is nice on the less sweaty part of the community. Let me know what you think though, because I personally never had any problems with it. As a whole, the update's pretty cool, but very rushed. It's better to have it than to not, of course, though you can tell that Higuruma came out of the oven half cooked. Next update, he'll probably be more fleshed out though, and he'll be a more proper character. Anyways, if you enjoyed watching, then make sure to subscribe since it really does help out a lot. I'm Paternally, hope you have a good day, and bye.